I'm sorry, Ewok. We gotta move.
Oh no, Ewok, you're blocking the view? No, poor guy. Did we want to light the candle, or are we good with that? I don't know if it's really in our shots.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's fine.
We'll figure it out next time.
We don't want to light the Ewok on fire.
Yeah, maybe we will.
He would burn. But anyway, all of y'all out there in the ether today, I know you've been waiting for this. We got some great engagement with our last video on this tome of weirdness that is Star Wars Supernatural Encounters, the dubiously canon but undubiously fascinating compendium of lore and fascination. But we did a very deep dive on that last time. Do you guys have any memories of that you'd like to regale me with as we're starting? Like anything you're kind of hoping to see today? Because I may or may not have it for you, you know?
Well, we already know you don't have our Ewoks.
No.
I did confirm there's new Ewoks today.
That's what we really want is the Ewoks.
Ewoks are coming. The only reason I don't have Ewoks today is because there's a whole Ewok video that will be hitting us in the future. There's so much Ewok stuff in this book that I swear I could not have put it in as just a segment of this video and like done justice to it. But that's what's on the docket for today. We should mention the elephant in the room, or rather the room itself being the elephant. We have a new setup.
Yes. We thought we would be professional and have a nice setup besides the blinds. So together, some art that I already bought from conventions and art stores, plus art by Ben Norton.
That's right. I have a few originals up on that wall.
Yes.
Proud of that.
I painted the Hashslinging Slasher.
Hashslinging Slasher is looking fantastic. I love this stuff. I think we have a great collection going so far, and we will only add to it. So wait and see what gets added to the Song of Songs here. But how do you feel about this setup, guys? Is this like nicer? Are you feeling professional?
It feels nice. Yeah, I had to drag this table over here, so I feel strong.
Well, Kelsey's been hitting the gym and like working out and stuff, so she's probably the strongest out of all of us. We rely on her like the Avengers rely on the Hulk. Yeah. But we have a great setup now. Including this Ewok that's just gonna sit here and be sad because we're not talking about the songs of his people today.
It's okay.
But it's coming, little buddy. It's
Mothman's
coming.
Here too.
Mothman's here too.
Chilling.
Mothman will enjoy this. There's lots of cryptic nonsense we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
But without any further ado, I think it's time to start delving deeper into Supernatural Encounters Part 2, where we explore a little bit further into some more specific aspects of this book that I've been especially interested in lately. But before anything else, I do want to say thank you to Joe Bongiorno, the author, because we are featured on his website now.
Yes.
How does that feel, people? I mean,
I feel famous now.
I know.
That.
I think it's incredible that he noticed us. I don't know how that happened. I know an editor of the book commented on the last post we made, the last video we made. I thought that was cool. We've had some great fans of this book show up for us, and that makes me feel amazing. I'm glad to be sharing this lore in a consumable and digestible way with the people of the universe who've yet to hear it. I love filling that niche, just being that, like, we're just folks talking, you know?
Yeah.
We're not like occultists that have like rituals and strange languages that people have to decipher. We're just like, let's talk about some
we're just
blobs.
learning from each other about cool things.
Yeah, learn about blobs that made the Star Wars universe.
Yes.
But we're on this website now. I love it. Definitely check out this website if you haven't already. StarWarsTimeline.net, where Joe Bongiorno, the author of this book, canonicizes every bit of Star Wars in one place. But there's something else I did want to mention, another elephant in the room. I know I've told both you guys about this already, but we're going to actually see it today. So another news from the realm of Dark Illithorion. Did you know Stephen Colbert name-dropped Typho Jim, the left-handed god, to Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself? I know I mentioned this to you. Do you guys remember who Typho Jim, the left-handed god, is from the last video?
It's where I go blank because I have so much information, but I feel like I describe
Cthulhu.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
He's Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there is this guy in Star Wars, Typho Jim, the left-handed god, the Cthulhu of Star Wars. And of all the Star Wars characters there are, of every more recognizable Star Wars character that could have been mentioned, Stephen Colbert talked about Typho Jim to Mark Hamill himself in this skit. And just a little refresher on who this guy is. That's him there. He's Cthulhu, basically.
Yeah.
And there's another guy on the right here. His name is Ajunta Paul. This was a Sith Lord who was considered the manifestation of Typho Jim because he was born left-handed. So he's the left-handed god. Left-handedness is apparently very rare in the Sith. So when you're born and you're using your left hand, they're like, Typho Jim, is that you? But that's a little bit of lore
Wild.
talked about a bit within Supernatural Encounters.
Oh, hey, Steven. Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about my new movie, The Life of Chuck.
Yeah, me too. But before anybody else, I just wanted to say, June the 4th be with you.
Say what?
You know, Star Wars Day, June the 4th be with you.
Yeah, that's not even a thing. I think you're thinking about May the 4th be with you. But again, The Life of Chuck. It's based on a Stephen King novella.
Oh, no. Last month was May. Now it's June the 4th, as in Ajunta Paul, first Dark Lord of the Sith. So, June the 4th be with you.
Can we not focus too much on the space movies? That was a long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
You make shirts.
Who that is?
Ajunta Paul, the manifestation of Typho Gem, the left-handed god. He never
There you
appeared in
go.
movies, but his tomb is a side quest in an Xbox game, so it's canon.
There you go. You heard it from his mouth. Typhogem,
Canon.
Ajunta Paul is canon. Now you have been caught up with that news. Somehow Supernatural Encounters has worked its way through the tubes of the internet and gotten into Stephen Colbert's
Crazy.
mouth, which blows my mind straight out of my head. I don't know if Stephen Colbert has read this book or if he's just finding the lore in pieces somewhere. Maybe he watched our video. No, he didn't. This is before our video.
No, we got some great nerdy interns.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like his knowledge of the Lord of the Rings lore, he's apparently pretty knowledgeable about Star Wars. So
Yeah.
let's see if we can get on his level today. Let's see if we can do the man proud. There he is with Mark Hamill again. We might have to do a watch party for The Life of Chuck. But anyway, what fresh horrors await today? The last episode we did was a pretty nice cliff notes for the book itself. But this time we are going to delve deeper into some more niche bits of discussion, which include some history of the book itself. I definitely wanted to talk more about that since we glossed over it. The Guide to the Celestial Spheres, which is an interesting companion piece to this book that I've been delving through. And that is where we're going to talk about the Avatar: The Last Airbender connections, because I've been waiting to dive into that.
Yeah.
And I have created a web of crackpot theories that connect it to Star Wars through this book. So I think you're going to enjoy that. I did hear the request for the Son of Sun's Prophecy being something we discussed today. I found some great stuff about that I think will be pretty interesting. And I have been all over lately the realm of Aperon, which is the sort of what if infinity realm of Star Wars, and its batch of lore that itself is an appendix in this book. So we're going to learn about that as well. Let's start from the beginning. I do want to tell the story of how I encountered supernatural encounters. I mean, people commented on the last one like, wow, you really went in cold to this. How do you even know about this book? Why would you read this before anything else? And I do want to tell that story because it's amusing.
Oh yeah, I do actually know. I've been mentioning it like a little bit.
Yeah, so it literally started with a wizard at a Halloween party. I know I told you this story, Kelsey.
Yes, I do know.
Emily, you don't know this.
No.
So I was at a Halloween party a couple years ago. I had a friend that I'd gone with who dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we're just sitting in a corner talking Star Wars, and this wizard comes up to us. I don't know who he was. I don't know who he knew at that party, why he was there. He's just dressed like Gandalf or some wizard. And he just randomly asks us, as we're talking about the Clone Wars or some shit, he says, well, have you ever heard of supernatural encounters in the Star Wars universe? And we're just like, what does that mean? You talking about like Force ghosts, like Yoda the ghost and stuff like that? He's like, no, I'm talking about like the history of the Star Wars universe and the explanation for everything in the Star Wars universe. And I'm just like, the what? I remember finding a bit of it that night online, reading a little excerpt of it, and thinking, all right, no, I'm not reading this. It's absolutely esoteric. It has $10 words every few seconds. This isn't what I like about Star Wars, or so I thought. Then the curiosity gnawed at me. I mean, I started watching other Star Wars videos that mentioned supernatural encounters again. Like, this was haunting me. I found more and more mention of the Bedlam spirits, like we talked about them, the architects who shaped the universe, people trying to debate what the Celestials were and saying there might be answers in this book, stuff like that. It just would not leave me alone. So I eventually figured out you could download this book for free on the website of the author, and I did it. And I just thought, all right, still not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to find the stuff that I think is interesting and try and digest it in pieces. Long story short, I read the whole thing.
Yep.
It eventually clicked. It eventually grabbed me. I just wanted to know so much more that I could not be stopped. And that's pretty much my story with this book. I have not read much else in the Star Wars universe. In the grand scheme of things, I'm really kind of new as a Star Wars fan. Like, I didn't grow up watching these movies, if you'll believe it. Like, as a kid, I couldn't have cared less about it. Like, I could talk your ear off about, like, Mario and that kind of stuff, like Kirby lore. Like, we'll talk about Kirby lore
Next
someday.
PowerPoint.
But people would be like, "Oh man, Darth Maul is so cool," and I'd be like, "What? He's just some red fuck. Like, who cares?" By the way, this hat today makes me feel like Darth Maul.
He does.
That's why I'm wearing it. That's pretty much how I was as a kid. Didn't really care about it. I didn't get into Star Wars until The Mandalorian. Believe it or not, it took that long for it
it's
to
so
grab
good,
me.
though.
I love
Yeah.
The Mandalorian. Like Grogu, The Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal. I loved it. It was like, all right, I'll watch it because everyone else is watching it. Says it's so fucking great. And it was like, all right, I'm in. I used to love the show Firefly, and I thought it reminded me of Firefly a lot, so I liked that. And that took me down the rabbit hole of Star Wars. I started rewatching all the prequels. I started getting into some of the books and stuff. But I've not read that much out of the expanded universe, so to speak, which is what most of Supernatural Encounters draws from, the like canceled extra Star Wars stuff. But I think it's interesting to think about, and we're going to talk about this on the next slide a little bit more, but I think this is a springboard that you can use to get into the expanded universe. Even if it seems very esoteric, it can teach you about the expanded universe, and everything you'd ever need to know is there, like the foundation of everything you need to know. And if you found something interesting from Supernatural Encounters, there's an expanded universe book about it, so you could learn more from the original sources that this drew from. So other stuff I have read from the EU, I've read the Devil Worlds comics, which are very old, like 80s Star Wars comics that were after Empire Strikes Back, I think. That's where like they started bringing out the weird stuff that this book was like they're taking the bread and butter from. And I fucking love these stories. They're short, they're easy to digest, just weird, like Lovecraftian things. There's one about Darth Vader fighting this assassin who can like make your own shame of what you've done kill you. And of course Darth Vader beats the guy because he has no shame. There's the one that introduces Wutzek, the Celestial, who has so much to do with this book. The Bedlam spirits come from these comics, so they're fun. They're fun little one-offs. I've enjoyed reading those, and I've read some of The Crystal Star because of Supernatural Encounters as as well. The Crystal Star is famously considered to be the worst Star Wars book ever written. So as soon as I heard that, I'm like, all right, I'm in. But this is what explains the entity known as Waru. Waru is one of those cubes with the scales all over it, the like glowing, floating, scaled cube things. But he has a whole story within The Crystal Star that I've yet to finish, yet to digest fully. I don't think it's the worst Star Wars book ever. I'm actually very fascinated, but I'm biased because of my love for the supernatural and the strange.
Yeah.
That's why it appeals to me. To continue with this topic, I mean, I think strange and cosmic stuff is the most interesting part of any franchise, if it has anything like it. Like, again, Kirby lore.
Yeah.
When you know that Kirby, that's why I love Kirby. The stranger, the better. I don't love hard sci-fi that much. The stuff like The Expanse, I mean, it's a good show, but like it's just so like hard science, and there's nothing that's like weird or like, ooh, what's happening there? There's no like mythology or anything. I love universes that have that kind of stuff. And again, yeah, it taught me a bunch of expanded universe lore just reading this Supernatural Encounters book. And I would say it's a starting point for the EU. A lot of people could use it that way. If you can get past the language that it's written in. Very hard to read. When it clicks, it will click.
Okay.
Take my testimony for that. So I do want to talk about the canon debate. We touched on this a little bit last time.
Yeah.
But this has so many layers to it, and I think it's kind of fascinating to discuss. Talk about like people that think it is absolutely canon to them, people that like would never consider this canon, and why. There's so many layers. It is a strange Star Wars book. It has a strange place within Star Wars lore. At the beginning of its history, it was originally intended to be published as articles in this magazine called Star Wars Gamer. And Star Wars Gamer, I do have some pictures of it here. It was this magazine that was published for a few years, pretty short-lived, but it was marketed to people that played like D&D campaigns with Star Wars. It was marketed to people that liked the video games that held the side quests and stuff like Stephen Colbert talked about, the extra stuff that was hidden in that stuff. But it would have great articles like sinister starships, radical races, or whatever. Radical rides. I read that as radical races. But there is radical races in Star Wars too. Marvelous aliens. But it was just a bunch of Star Wars lore, basically, just to inspire people for their D&D campaigns. And that's where this would have been serialized. Originally, that's what it was pitched for, just a series of articles that explained some weird cults in Star Wars, some weird encounters with beings that were never explained, some things that like just have never been touched on in the movies, but might appeal to like, if you're a DM and you want something funky in your campaign, because, you know, it's like we talk about with our own campaigns, like sooner or later, you're going to encounter a cult.
Yes.
Even if you're in Star Wars, it's going to happen. There are cults out there. sacrificing on altars to the immortal gods of the Sith. So that's what this was going to be. That magazine was canceled. It was pretty much a short run thing. Wizards of the Coast published it, role-playing games, video games. It ran from November 2000 to May 2002. So pretty short, kind of strangled in the crib, unfortunately.
That was about when I was learning to read.
Oh,
so
man,
I definitely didn't read it.
You wouldn't have gotten that.
Bring it back.
I think we should. I'd love to find some issues of that and like, incorporate it somehow.
Yeah.
But then when that kind of went the way of the dinosaurs, it was kind of retooled. This series of Supernatural Encounters articles, they were slated for publishing online on the Star Wars website Hyperspace, which was the worldwide fan club for Star Wars on Lucasfilm's website. This was something you had to pay to get into. It's like a paid sort of like fan club.
Okay.
Where you could interact with some Star Wars fans. You could get custom avatars. It was a very fun little sort of Gaia Online type space. Yeah. But that's where this would have been published alongside its companion book, which I don't think we've mentioned by name yet, Cult Encounters. Cult Encounters did end up being included in the final release of Supernatural Encounters.
Okay.
Much shorter. But there were 2 volumes at first. There was the cults, because everybody loves cults.
Yeah.
And then there was all the supernatural stuff. Would have been a duology of novellas. There's Cult Encounters, the original cover for that. Got this wizard being like, ooh.
He has a third eye or something.
Yeah, he does. Very sinister dude. Wouldn't want to run into him. Excerpts from the Last Days of Arhul Hextrafine was what this was called. So it's about the same guy from A New Hope that you saw with the medal given to everybody at the end of A New Hope.
Little hat guy.
Yeah. But this whole licensing question comes up a lot when people talk about whether this is canon, whether this ever would have been canon or still is. You can actually find the truth, even though some people ignore it. And the truth is the story was licensed by Lucasfilm after the author, Joe Bongiorno, whose website we're now on, filled out the requisite forms, and it was approved for publication. Had nothing changed within Star Wars, like the brass and the EU being canceled and everything, this would have been published pretty much. And official cancellation never even occurred. So there was never even word on high. After they said, like, no more expanded universe, that's gone. Even after that, they never told the guy, like, you're canned. So there was still hope for a long time. This might get officially published. So there wasn't a cancellation. It wasn't like people read this and were like, no, this doesn't belong in Star Wars. Lucasfilm seems to have liked it. Like, there were people that read it and liked it. Like Pablo Hidalgo, a guy from Lucasfilm who's going to publish this, read it and liked it. But it wasn't finished then yet. So probably stuff has been added to it since then. So who knows what they would say now. It's its own beast. But Cult Encounters and Supernatural Encounters, they are published on StarWarsTimeline.net, same website we're featured on, just to gauge the interest, just to see, like, do people want to read about this stuff? They were in shorter form back then. The complete versions were finally published there long after the expanded universe had been declared non-canon and nothing new was coming out of that anymore. There is evidence for all of that. You can read the whole testimony on this website of, like, every step this guy went through to get his stuff published. So what I think at the end of the day you can do with all this information is you can take Supernatural Encounters and decide for yourself, this is canon to Star Wars in my mind. Like, I consider it canon to Star Wars in my mind because it's too good not to consider canon in my mind, I think. Some people might object to it a little bit more. Some people might want to consider it their own, its own canon, just its own beast, aside from the rest of even the expanded universe, like its own set of rules and stories. I think that's fine if you want to do that. Or you can just take the parts from it you like and make your own head canon and just leave the parts you don't like out of it. Like, if something in this rubs you the wrong way and ruins Star Wars for you, you don't have to take it that seriously. Like, you can just ignore that and just be like, oh, but I like the other stuff. That's up my alley. I'll keep that. Yeah. It's a what do they say? It's a buffet. Everybody always says that with fandoms and stuff like that. So
take what you like, leave what you don't.
Right. One thing it's not is fan fiction. I hear this claim.
It's not fan fiction.
Yeah. People who say that this is fan fiction are just edgelords, I think, trying to just dismiss something that they don't personally like for whatever reason.
They don't know what fan fiction is.
No. If this were fan fiction, there would be, like, Ewok polyamory and stuff like that.
They're not.
Well, there probably is if you look deep enough. But you know what you're looking for if you ever go on like AO3 or those websites and look up Star Wars. There's Star Wars fan fiction aplenty for you if that's what you're thinking you're going to find. But this is not fan fiction in my mind. This is a step above fan fiction by a significant margin. So why don't some people like supernatural encounters? To continue, I think some people dislike this book because to them it ruins the mystery of Star Wars. People like the kind of we don't know everything, and this is a book that very much tells you everything you never knew. People don't really want to know to some degree like what the Celestials were. They'd prefer they stayed this mysterious entity never explained, or how the galaxy came to be. It's just personal taste, I guess. Another thing people don't like out of this book that I would definitely put in the category of like, if you don't like it, just don't consider it canon. You can erase that, is the crossovers. That's not the fault of the book, even. The fact that there's crossovers with other media like Avatar The Last Airbender, which we're going to discuss. E.T. The Alien versus Predator franchise is in this. What else is in this? Willow. We're going to talk about Willow crossovers in this. Everything George Lucas ever like licensed has been taken care to include in this book. Like even if it's not Star Wars. So stuff like there was this Super Nintendo game called Big Sky Trooper, which I don't think anyone ever played, but it was licensed by Lucasfilm. And I looked into this while I was doing this PowerPoint. Terrible looking game where you're just like going around planets and there's this robot dog and stuff. Something from that game made it into this. The quantum machines at the start of the universe that like created midichlorians, that's from Big Sky Trooper. So
Wild.
but all that to say, the crossovers were not decided to be in this book because like the author wanted to include them out of the spur of his mind. They happened in other published Star Wars material before this. Like there were crossovers you can find in Star Wars comics, a lot of different Star Wars media with things like Firefly, same show I was just talking about. Firefly is part of Star Wars. You can see a xenomorph in Star Wars at one point. You can see somebody dressed like a Star Trek character in Star Wars. So what this author did is just take these things that might have just been Easter eggs, and he's just like, you know what? If we're taking everything as canon here, we're taking everything as canon, and we have to assume that because these crossovers exist in these comics, they're canon.
Yeah, crossovers exist in like all different types of Marvel. I'm reading currently was the Predator versus like Black Panther and what was the other one?
Predator versus Black
Werewolf.
Panther would go hard. Oh my god!
I read that one, and then I also read Werewolf. Not Werewolf. Wolverine.
Yeah.
I look like Werewolf.
He's
He is kind of a werewolf if you think about it. Different take on a werewolf.
I was thinking his name. Yeah, Wolverine versus Predator. So,
but yeah,
that series is coming out. There's a Spider-Man one I want really bad.
There was a Marvel and Attack on Titan crossover once. I mean, these are ubiquitous to media, so of course they're going to happen in Star Wars. And it's just the decision of this author to be like, you know what? It's more fun if we consider them canon. And let's have some fun with this instead of just being like, oh no, that guy was wearing a Starfleet uniform because he just happened to dress that way.
Yeah.
If you like this less than I like it, that's what you can consider maybe. Just like it's a coincidence or it's something like that, but not the thing itself. But I think it's fun to have these crossovers in this.
So Supernatural Encounters is more like a research paper, like compiling all of this instead of
it's very much a
creating
research
stuff
paper.
out of nothing.
Yeah, like there's very little in this book that the author made up himself, unless it was stuff the author made up himself for past Star Wars stuff he worked on that was published.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Like the character Uradriel, one of the old ones, who's like the original cube with scales on it. That was a character he created for a different Star Wars thing. So he just incorporated it back into this.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's just making stuff up and being like, Teletubbies are now canon in Star Wars because I said so. Like for Teletubbies to be canon in Star Wars, you would have had to find a spot in the original comics or anything else before that has a Teletubby in it. So it is very much a research paper.
All of a sudden, a second son shows up as baby's face.
Yeah.
Different baby's face. It's Star Wars now.
This would include the Lego movie too.
Would it? Yeah, because there's Star Wars crossovers in there, right?
Yeah.
Man, I wonder what the Lego connections are. Is that a separate universe? The Lego Star Wars universe? It's not talked about in this.
It's in a kid's imagination, so... Or is it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, like in Across the Spider-Verse, that's a different dimension. It's a whole
That's true.
area. So that it could be a different dimension and its own little thing, but also it could be into this. He can expand more.
I think it's totally the kind of thing you could fit into the framework established for this book, because I think the basic thesis of Supernatural Encounters is every fictional universe is like something that the Celestials that were in our universe at the dawn of our universe sprang off and created themselves. So they're all connected. There's places where they bleed over. So Star Wars Lego could be its own universe somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's in Aperon, the Infinity Realm.
Yeah.
That's probably my theory.
Yeah.
It could happen there. Splendid App would like it. But another thing that I think people don't like about this sometimes is it takes more of a Western approach philosophically to this light versus dark, order versus chaos. I mean, like in the classical, like J.R.R. Tolkien and the C.S. Lewis sense, rather than like what Star Wars does in the original movies. It's more Buddhist inspired, Eastern inspired. And I would even contest that to a degree, because I think there was always that almost like Christian-esque light versus dark thing in Star Wars. It just blends with the East and the West.
Yeah.
So it's not one or the other. It's a blend of both. But I've seen people online talking about Supernatural Encounters, like quote unquote, lessening the Eastern philosophy of Star Wars to make this more like Paradise Lost narrative happen. And I don't know. I mean, it's people's preference. I don't think that's what it does. But yeah, you can take that for whatever it's worth. And the other thing that it definitely does, like I will 100% say, like, yeah, it does this. It lessens certain events, factions, or other things in Star Wars that were thought of as a big deal before this book explained them a little bit more and revealed that they were not. So 2 examples of that I will talk about are the Ricotten Infinite Empire and the Yuuzhan Vong, which were 2 factions in Star Wars that I don't know if you've heard of either of those. They're kind of deep cuts.
Okay.
But what those were is, on the left here, you have the Ricotten Infinite Empire. Aliens that look like that were just like sacking the universe in the early days of the galaxy. I think they had hyperdrives for the first time. Those were the first hyperdrives ever built in Star Wars that followed the Force to planets full of life. And these fuckers would just come through and just like rain terror on those planets. They were mentioned in Andor the most recently. Like there's several mentions of these guys in Andor, talking about like planets like Chandrila, where like Mon Mothma and the Senators are from, and talking about like in the old days the Ricottans sacked them. And then on the right here you have the Yuuzhan Vong, which is a fascinating rabbit hole we could go down, but I'll give you the cliff notes. So they're from outside the galaxy. They don't believe in using any technology that's made by hand. Everything they have is organic. It's sort of like the Avatar movies, not The Last Airbender, but like the James Cameron ones.
The blue people.
The blue people. They have those set of rules. It's like, don't use turning wheels or take metal from the earth. Everything is like organic, and they are religious fanatics about that too. So they believe anyone using technology needs to get culled from the universe. So people thought they were a very big deal. They came from a whole other galaxy, crossed like bajillions of light years to get to the Star Wars galaxy and invade it. But what Supernatural Encounters reveals is they're actually just from this dwarf galaxy orbiting the main galaxy, Sky River. So they didn't go that far. They didn't come like from infinite distance away.
Okay.
They're not that alien. Like they actually originated in the Star Wars galaxy before they sort of evolved in darkness away from everything into these weirdos. So people didn't like that. People thought like, oh no, they need to be these actual alien things that came from places no one had ever been. And the Ricotten Infinite Empire, the other thing with them was they were revealed to be a much shorter lived and much smaller scale, and much more like infighting happened within them. So people believed they were just this unstoppable force of evil, and it's kind of revealed like, no, they're kind of just like cowards and bullies, you know? So people don't like that so much. They were really into the fact of like, oh no, this thing was unstoppable. I think both of these, you kind of get those fans of like the Warhammer 40K type stuff, like just like we were talking about before we started recording, where people are into the grim dark, like war is eternal and darkness is eternal. I don't think that's what Star Wars is. Like, keep that out of Star Wars. Star Wars is about the light overcoming the dark always, and there's like things to hold hope in. So I think Supernatural Encounters kind of corrects the course on these things and like puts them back into the category of like, no, they could have been redeemed. They just chose not to. They aren't just this like, we will kill everything because it is our nature, you know? But people can get obsessive about that, and maybe they don't like this book for doing that to these guys. They killed their darlings. So we're going to go on from that topic to the guide to the celestial spheres, and this is where we're going to talk about Avatar lore. So hold on to your butts.
I got my tea. That's my arrow.
Yes, you are set. So there were a couple companion books published on this website alongside Supernatural Encounters a little bit after it came out, and that includes the Guide to the Firstborn Races and the Guide to the Celestial Spheres. These are sort of handbooks that explain like the firstborn species of the galaxy. The one on the left here, every firstborn species created directly by the Celestials. I know we talked about some of those last time, including E.T.'s race. I mean, he was one of them. And then the Guide to the Celestial Spheres goes into some of the more esoteric planets that were part of larger galactic history in this era of supernatural encounters. So these were not written by the same author. They're like separately published companion books, but these are approved. Like these have been, sorry, I keep burping. I'm drinking all this Diet Coke, Nectar of the Gods. Who am I sharing it with? Richard? Richard, is there a Richard out here? Actually, Rich Handley edited Supernatural Encounters, or like worked on it with Joe Bongiorno. So is Rich short for Richard? If so, we're sharing it for you, Rich.
Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
I love how you made that work.
Sometimes I can fly by the seat of my pants. But anyway, that's what those two are. I've been kind of dipping my toe into the ladder here, Guide to the Celestial Spheres, because that is where I think it is most directly laid out. The Avatar planet is in Star Wars.
Okay.
So we'll talk about sacred worlds first, because when we talk about the Avatar planet Ravoth, it is a sacred world. The term sacred world in Supernatural Encounters is used on these two planets that were designated sacred by the Celestials. The first is Anduin, which is the world that Willow takes place on, the crazy George Lucas film Willow that had the sort of swords and sorcery deal happening. That's actually in the Star Wars universe. It was always in the Star Wars universe. Wasn't even really a secret, kind of an open secret. And then the other companion sacred world to that is Ravoth. And Ravoth was also designated by Talatni, your favorite goddess,
Green
Emily,
goddess, yeah.
as an Earth world. So it was seeded by humans that she took directly from the original Earth. So both of these planets, what made them sacred was they were strange nexuses of flesh and spirit, where there were realms beyond intrinsically linked to these planets. Like they were sort of places where the veil was thin. You could get through the spirit worlds and the Fey worlds and things like that on these planets. And additionally, the planet Tython, which is where these pictures of Grogu take place. Like in The Mandalorian, they went to the planet Tython to put him on the Seeing Stone and have him contact the Jedi. And the reason that planet was so important on that show is because it was the original place all the Jedi of the universe were brought to when the Jedi Order began. One of the planets they were brought from was Ravoth, by the way. But that's why I got Grogu here. You got to include a little Grogu. And it was designated a sacred world during that time. Like the Celestials, when they made that happen for the Jedi, they were like, we need to behave like this is sacred, just like the sacred worlds of old. So it kind of got an honorary mention there. Here is Ravoth's page from the Guide to the Celestial Spheres. You can see they physically used the image of the Avatar planet. Like if you know that map, that's it. You can see the sort of familiar shapes there. That's definitely it. And there is some very interesting Vitza lore dropped in this guidebook. There's a quote from Supernatural Encounters up on the top here. Ravoth knew its benefactors, referring to the Celestials in terms of the elements. Luxos as Solum, represented by a boar. Zurs as Exoro, represented by a dragon. Maruts as Maritimus, represented by a turtle. And Wutzek as Eris, represented by an eagle. And it goes on to talk about these elementals, like these elemental gods. Being connected to foreign nations. Like they have interesting names. It's not names you would recognize from Avatar, but why I think that is because we're talking about a different age before anything we ever knew in Avatar. This is like Avatar lore that precedes all Avatar lore we ever knew. It says, in the age of vernal splendor, Ravoth was a place where the circles of the world, flesh, and spirit overlapped, leaving it inextricably linked to the realms beyond. The again with these names, I always have to stumble over these. Hydresian, Ursatian, Pyrdracon, and Ruakian elementals, rarely if ever glimpsed on other worlds, congregated freely and in many forms upon its surface, along with a melange of other ethereal, spiritual, and fey beings. The decision by Talatni to claim Ravoth as an Earth world and transpose humans on its surface was a deliberate provocation intended to test the limits of the Celestials' policy of limited interventionism. So everything on Ravoth had to do with these elementals. Yeah. I think elementals in Star Wars, it's mentioned they're in every planet. They just usually don't come out. They don't ever see the surface. They kind of live in the worlds and make the worlds sort of run. But you would have to piss them off to ever have like a fire elemental come out and attack you. Yeah. This was the place where they kind of just hung out. So the humans came to Ravoth. From this same guidebook, it says, these early humans sparked much debate, but little response as they coalesced into foreign nation states: rugged Imperia, icy Norda, the fiery southern expanse, and the nomadic windward steppes. So different names, but kind of familiar, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like the four nations of Avatar are some previous incarnation of them, maybe before the ones we knew. So when they waged war against their neighbors, the chaos and bloodshed allowed the Ancient Ones, the immortal gods of the Sith, to penetrate the sacred world with Ion, that's the ultimate evil, the guy you heard called Nakash before, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the dark tempter of all. Ion himself manifested in the form of Mortuus, different name there. You'll also hear the name Vatu in this same thing later. The Celestials were forced to intervene to ensure his containment, but the tendency of humans to repeat the same cycles of behavior posed a long-term threat to Ravoth. Thus, Maruts, one of the original Celestials alongside Wutzek, they had created like all the Bedlam spirits. Maruts, the most beloved of the four Osiarch, who created Sky River, chose to incarnate and bond herself to the humans of the sacred world, guiding them along a more benevolent path. What is basically revealed here is who we know as Rava, the spirit of light, the most ancient of all spirits, is one of the Osiarch, who's also known as Maruts, a very ancient celestial who created the Star Wars universe and chose to personally intervene on this sacred planet because it was that important to guide the humans towards something better. A little bit more from that. Though her departure pained the other Osiarch, Luxos most of all, Maruts, who was worshipped locally as Rava, the namesake of their world, successfully guided the humans on Ravoth, navigating the cycles of conflict towards long-lasting peace and ensuring that Ion remained contained. As it's humans who had come to learn the ways of the Force from the elementals before they became less abundant, came to call themselves the Bendu, and while some would use their powers for ill, the teaching of Maruts would triumph. When they were ready, Maruts sent the Bendu forth from Ravoth to meet with other defenders and guardians, who syncretized their beliefs to form the Dai Bendu, which in turn went on to become one of the original founders of the Jedi Order. So there is a direct line traced between the Benders of Ravoth, who are called the Bendu, being the foundation of the Jedi. Like, these were some of the most ancient foundational Jedi in the universe. They just manipulated the Force a little differently. They didn't do telekinesis or anything. They used the elements because they learned it from the elementals. So the Dai Bendu became one of the founders of the Jedi Order. Ravoth has remained largely hidden since, save for during the new Sith Wars, when a cruiser bearing exiles from the world crash-landed on Krovar, with its survivors giving rise to a corrupted tradition known as the Shapers. This is where it gets really, really interesting. But I do want to talk about this quote first. In the era before the Avatar, we bent not the elements, but the energy within ourselves. What I think that means in the context of this is the elementals or the firstborn or whatever the lion turtles were. Like, I have different theories of who I think the lion turtles were in this context. They might have been elementals themselves, or they might have been part of the firstborn. They might have been the star dragons, things with the name I can't pronounce. But they were probably talking about just using the Force versus using the Force to control elements. The spirit of the soul versus like using the elements around you, right? But the Shapers of Krovar, this is an interesting thing within Star Wars lore. There are benders in Star Wars. That's why this all connects. There were Force-sensitive people, and before supernatural encounters, all we knew about them was they were exiled from a distant planet, didn't used to know what it was. This reveals it was Ravoth. They experienced a technological regression. The Shapers were considered superstitious and proud of their powers. They distrusted Force users who used invisible manifestations such as telekinesis or mind tricks, and individuals with those talents on Krovar were persecuted. Instead, most of the Shapers' abilities were focused on warfare and harnessing of the elements earth, fire, water, and air. So a little more warlike than the Benders that you know, kind of all Fire Nation, really, if you think about it. But these were Benders. They used the elements. They didn't use the Force in any other way. And now we know where they came from, Ravoth.
Quick catch up.
Yeah.
Why were they exiled?
So we don't know. That's the thing. They just seem to have appeared from the universe. I'm wondering if it was because they're so violent. So imagine like the Avatar.
The Avatar was like, get out.
Yeah, maybe the Avatar himself, if like Maruts was still hanging around on the planet as Rava, maybe she was just like through the Avatar at the time, like, you guys have got to go. And in this
off the atmosphere.
And what I love about this lore connecting is you can kind of use this to trace a future for the Avatar world where like eventually they go to space and they meet other people that control the elements or the Force and form the Jedi. So maybe by this point, you know, they're flying through space a little bit and the Avatar can literally put somebody on a spaceship and make them fuck off into the cosmos.
Oh yeah, the tech regression, yeah.
And then they had a tech regression and became these Shapers of Krovar. So I really wish there was more information about these guys out there. I wanted to do more research into these guys, but there isn't quite a lot as I wish.
At least not yet.
Not yet. Maybe there's more out there to come.
Joe, get on it.
Yeah. Please. There was some interaction between the Shapers of Krovar and the Night Sisters, who are the witches of Star Wars, like where Darth Maul came from.
Yeah.
The Night Sister Mother Talzin, who is Darth Maul's mother, actually said about them, misguided they may be, but the Shapers of Krovar gain their powers from the spirits. So another little Avatar nod there, right?
Yeah.
Coming from the spirits.
You're convincing me.
Yeah. The powers wielded by the Shapers of Krovar were largely focused into warfare. In battle, they utilized elemental powers that harnessed elements of nature such as earth, air, water, and fire against their enemies. They were considered aggressive and suspicious, which led to their initial hostilities with the Jedi. So the Jedi had conflict with these people.
Okay.
There was sort of a war happening. Shapers often specialized in a particular element, such as fire, but master Shapers could wield many or all of them. So there were avatars among them, but more than one. So it's kind of evolved at this point from only one needing the celestial to be able to do that versus like these that have just enhanced enough that they know how to do it as masters, like a master Jedi would be stronger, right? So Shapers tended to take the philosophy involved with their elements of study and apply it to the battlefield. For example, a Shaper specializing in air was expected to be mobile in combat, like an Airbender.
Yeah.
Very Avatar. So I'm going to keep drawing these connections. There's way more to go. This is from a chapter of Supernatural Encounters itself. We're off the companion book that mentions some stuff from Avatar. This is when Marutz is deciding to go to the planet and incarnate as Rava in the Avatar. She says someone else is trying to convince her. This is Ifa, one of the Valdalar, one of the incarnated Celestials, who we will talk about more later in this PowerPoint as well. He's trying to convince her, don't go. We could just lure these nameless dark things to an uninhabited world and get him off this sacred planet. But Marutz had already considered this. The Lords of Darkness are not easily lured, she says. The barrier between our realm and the material one is most permeable on Ravoth. Our arrival will open barriers at the poles where none dwell and the walls are thin. In such a place, I will have the greatest advantage. You may be able to ensnare him in the harmonic convergence, Nifal intoned. That's the counterpart of Ifa. They're the son and the daughter. She referred to the time when the planets of the system lined up as they did at the start, when the Celestials first manifested in Samunaru, strengthening the mesh of cosmic energy that flowed from the Force. So if you've seen Legend of Korra, you know what this looks like.
Yes.
I mean, you literally know what this is talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vatu ensnared in the harmonic convergence. He's the nameless dark one here.
Did they actually call it harmonic convergence in Korra?
Yeah, they did. That was the term they used.
Oh my god.
So, like, they're referring back to that here in Supernatural Encounters, talking about, like, no, that's literally what it happened here. A bit more on Vatu. The Celestials did not use the names of the enemy, which they referred to by various epithets. Bogan, the Ancient Ones, Lords of Darkness, Outer Gods, Necromantic Ones, Eldritch Powers, Eternal Ones, Phantom Lords, Timeless Ones, Irin, and later the Immortal Gods of the Sith. A lot of fucking names.
Yeah.
But it's a whole galaxy, so can you blame them? So as to distinguish the head of that pantheon from the others, they referred to the Dark One as the Father of Shadows. Some cults that emerged in the Cosmic Wars depicted his blasphemous idol as that of a winged, lion-headed, serpent-entwined key-bearer called Ion or Ong, though the people of Ravoth called the ancient oppressor Mortuus, which is the name you heard first, and then eventually Vatu. And other people's had other names, of course, because there got to be more fucking names. But that's who this is. I think I had this piece of art in the last one, the lion-headed evil avatar, but he can also incarnate as that more familiar Vatu. Just the same being, eternal dark, the ancient oppressor, the darkness at the root of all evil. There's more to this. Further action must be taken, declared Wutzek. Wutzek is like my favorite character in all of this. I fucking love Wutzek. His very presence, even prisoned, puts Ravoth, not just as humans, but the beasts and elementals in danger. And so there is this being called the Shamaness of the Wills that interferes here. And the Wills, if you might remember that, were these like microscopic things that influence the will of the galaxy. Like they're midichlorian communicators of some kind. But there are shamans and shamanesses of the wills as well, and this is one of them. The shamaness of the wills says, "I will fashion for them a spirit world akin to the circle of the spirit, wherein they will be contained and safe for a time." This announcement was made by Lady Brahle, shamaness of the wills, speaking for the first time. A few claimed that it was from her and Amon Lith. I don't really know who Amon Lith is. I'm trying to figure out what this connects to. It's probably something else, some other crossover that I don't get.
Yeah.
I just don't know the original. Amon Lith, that Luxos conceived the idea of Sky River, while some said that there were elder ones besides these from which Saminaru was imagined. What I think that refers to, actually, this just clicked for me. Luxos is Lucas. How did that just click for me? I didn't get this until now.
Okay.
He's the stand-in for George Lucas, one of the Celestials who created Star Wars. The others are probably other names that you have to either know or you don't.
Yeah.
But perhaps it's saying that Luxos was inspired by the Wills, the storytellers of the universe, to create Star Wars. But you could dive deeper into that some other time, I guess. I don't want to get on that tangent right now. It's just hitting me. We got to delve future into that some other PowerPoint. Provided the contagion of darkness does not overwhelm Ravoth, the spirits can aid in preserving the sacred qualities of this world and perhaps even benefit the humans. So it was this shamaness of the wills, who we do see down here. That's the shamaness of the wills who appeared in the Clone Wars at one point. It was her idea to make the spirit world on Ravoth, to give them a place to go, all the elementals and spirits, and then have them coalesce with the humans and have them learn from one another. But we know how that went in the Avatar continuity. A lot of back and forth on that, having them separated and then finally integrated again.
Yeah.
But all will of the universe, will with an H,
Yeah.
wills. And then finally, this is from a much further aspect of supernatural encounters, a much later chapter. It's talking about some of the Jedi that have congregated through the universe to form the first Jedi Order, but it mentions Ravoth again. I don't know what Thape is, some other planet, but it's talking about those on Thape would be joined by those from Ravoth, who'd been sent by Maruts, whom they know as Rava. In friendship, they mingled practices and learned from one another's philosophies, and many years hence they moved again, this time to Ando Prime, where the Talids who joined them came to call their community the Dai Bendu, which translates to both the circle of the Benders and the center of the bound. And the Dai Bendu is what became the Jedi. Those who manifested force abilities, as had Edie, this character from a different story we could delve into another time, yet again, the Abysses and their later offspring were called Jed, which means master, and those they trained were called Pod, which means student. That's where Padawan comes from.
Yeah.
Those words come down from the force-sensitive descendants of the Jedak king and Jedara queen of Tamuzan, who joined the Dai Bendu around the same time as the followers of Palawa. Word. Interesting, like, etymology stuff that's just all being dumped on us here. I want to delve into this sometime.
Tammuz is a Semitic word.
Yeah. Was that in one of your PowerPoints,
Yeah, it was
Emily?
a month,
That's really familiar to me. So interesting that that's in Star Wars.
Yeah. And followers of the word, that's a very like New Testament Christian thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Which you can totally draw a comparison between the Jedi and
Absolutely.
that. Like, they're the ones that promulgate the word, right? The way of the Jedi. Very kind of Christian fishers of men type stuff, if you think about it. But the Temple of the Source and the Academy of the Way were founded to study and develop their psionic powers. Thus, the Jedi Bendu can refer to the community of force wielders amongst the Bendu. So the inhabitants of Ravoth. Oh my God, I can't even talk. This is like I'm tripping over myself. This
Drink
is
your
so
Diet
much
Coke.
more. Yeah, hold on. Diet Coke break. Yeah.
In one of the Ba Sing Se episodes of Avatar, there was the Dai Li.
Yeah, the Dai Li.
Yep.
Another
They were like the
interesting-
secret.
Yeah, they were like secret police, right?
Yes,
they
I
like
think so.
Disappeared people under the city.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's etymologically.
Probably. I mean, you
Similar.
can probably draw that comparison. If you can think of what Dai means, like there's
Yeah.
probably a meaning for Dai
I
Li.
think that's an actual Chinese thing.
It probably is. Like, I wonder what it
That's
means.
Most of Avatar things are.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything came from real etymology. But then you have the Dai
We
Bendu.
need tones for it.
Yeah.
But that is interesting. I didn't think about the Dai Li at all. Dai Li, Dai Bendu, different connection there.
It could mean to wear.
It means to wear. Okay.
Could mean to respect.
Well, it depends on what the tone
Yeah.
is.
Okay, yeah.
The tone changes the word
Interesting.
meaning completely.
And I guess
Do you
we don't
wanna-
know for
Do
certain
you want
what.
to read the tones? You see
Oh
that?
god, I'm
No, okay, just kidding.
I
just
don't want
kidding,
people to
just
judge
kidding.
me on my tone read. I do like I've been studying Chinese for a few years, but it's my tones are not very good.
So to wear, to support, or to respect. So
I'm just going to take all
respect.
three of those meanings, honestly.
Yeah.
Because you can consider if the people of Ravoth, the Benders, are called the Bendu, that's just the name of their human subspecies. The Dai Bendu could be the robed Bendu, like they're wearing
Yeah.
robes like Jedi. The Dai Bendu could be the respected Bendu. What was the third one?
Support.
Respect, support, wear.
Support, maybe the Bendu of support that like
Yeah.
support the universe as it grows. That's what the Jedi do. So you could really tie this together. I mean, I think we just did a little sleuthing here. I don't think this is known in Star Wars lore yet that this connection exists. So I'm proud of us. Thank you for providing.
I think it's gonna be support, but this is guessing.
Yeah.
I'm being about Daily.
I mean, it's such a supernatural encounters thing to have everything have so many different meanings or different names.
Yeah.
So you could take all three of those, I think.
And Tammuz, sorry.
Yeah, please go on, yeah.
That's a place, right? In Star Wars?
Yeah, in Star Wars, it's saying Tammuzan was a place where there was a king and queen who called themselves the Jadak and the Jadara. That's what it's saying.
Okay.
The Force-sensitive king and queen.
Okay, Tammuz comes from Dumuzdi, which is a Mesopotamian god of like for agriculture, fertility. He goes to the underworld, dies, comes back to life. I don't know how that connects, but
Maybe it
that's
does.
who it is.
I would have to know more about Tammuzan in
Yeah.
Star Wars. Like, there's probably something in this book that tells more about that, or elsewhere outside of it that tells more about that. But I would have to do another deep dive. Man, there's stuff I need to research now. That's why I love doing these. Like,
it's so
I'll present lore that I know and get lore from you guys that I don't know, and it contributes to what we all know.
Yeah.
It's education, baby.
From edamonline.com, Tammuz means the sun who rises, like child sun,
Uh huh.
and the faithful sun.
Interesting.
So
Like both types of sun.
no, it's same
It's
like
the same?
child sun.
Okay,
yeah,
child
faithful
sun.
sun and the sun.
And the sun who rises.
I didn't even get the solar connotations of that.
Whoa, okay. Man, this is like apotheosis moment right here. Now every word that starts with AP makes me think of Splendid App. That's the
Yeah.
other thing this book has corrupted me into thinking. Like, every time I find a word out there that just starts with AP, I'm like, oh, Splendid App. Because they do a lot of wordplay with Splendid App in this book. But we're going to talk about him later. I'm saving this for the last bit of this PowerPoint. But that's that. To end this segment, I'm going to tell you what I believe about the Star Wars and Avatar connections. That's not one and the same with what the book probably believes or says. It's just conclusions I've drawn on my own mostly. I think the four nations that are mentioned in Supernatural Encounters, which were not the names of the four nations you know from Avatar, are four nations that existed in a different cycle of 10,000 years in a different era of the sacred world. Because I could totally see it being... It's a pattern that repeats for
Yeah.
time immemorial.
There are only so many elements.
Yeah.
You humans put stuff into categories.
Exactly. And then they go to war, they have to fight it out, they have to reach peace, but eventually
Yeah.
they're going to regress. And then out of the regression will come the new civilization. It goes and then it regresses. The new Avatar series that's coming is going to have it regress again. So it goes on and on and on. That's what I think. It's just a different set of four nations. The Benders, aka the Dai Bendu, were very ancient Jedi who used the Force in just different ways. That's what I think. The Bendu, if you ever hear the term Bendu elsewhere in Star Wars, it's all about balance. It's just a word that means balance in any context you ever find it in Star Wars. Like there's Ashla and Bogan, which are the light and the dark, and between them there's something called Bendu, which usually means balance. There's even a being called the Bendu, which is that thing
That's
with
why I
the
think
moose head.
Dai means it's a support because it supports balance.
Yeah, the
Dai
supporters of
Bendu,
balance. That's
yeah.
a good
Yeah.
name for the Jedi.
I like that. Yeah.
But that guy with the moose head there, he's called the Bendu, and he's this other supernatural being that just lives on his planet, and he's all about balance. He considers himself the one in between the light and the dark, and his name is Bendu. So every time you find the name Bendu in Star Wars, that's what it's about. It's balance. I think the Avatar, the original Avatar that Marut's inhabited, was a Jedi who was just enhanced to the state of Master Shaper, as the Shapers of Krovar would eventually call it, through the spirit of Marut's, the Celestial, who they knew as Rava.
Yeah.
And eventually they could get to that state themselves. They just had to train and advances of society, but in those earlier years they needed the celestial to bend all the elements.
Yeah.
And then the lion turtles are the biggest mystery to me. Where do they fit in? I can't decide if they're elementals, like that's one of the elementals they're talking about on this planet, or they're the firstborn. There's the word I can't say. Dwinuagwin.
You're doing great.
The star dragons. They could totally be a star dragon variant, one of the firstborn that way, or they could be elementals. I don't know. I'm gonna have to leave that up to the audience.
I would say elemental because they're. Wait. No. Okay. I don't know then.
See, I could believe that they're elementals because they're known to give people the ability to bend the elements. So they would be guardians of the elements.
Yeah, I was thinking of like the dragon is the first bender of fire.
There are actual dragons, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's was it the mole?
The Bajmol.
There were Bajmols.
Was the first earthbender. That's what I was thinking, but the lion turtle's a bit different.
The lion turtles can give bending, so people when they need to go out into the spirits and stuff, deal with them. They're like, "Oh, I'll give you some water to go get what you need."
Yeah.
And then they'll come back and they have to give her bending up.
Pretty much.
I will say something about the master shapers. There is a theory that at least airbending is learned. Because all the airbenders are monks. They're not a family that the airbending was genetically passed down through. So they could be just airbenders pop up in populations and they go to the temples, or it's just this community that learns it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because you never saw an air monk that wasn't an airbender. I mean, that's not true of anyone else in Avatar. There's
Well, it's because they're very spiritual, and that's what allows them to do it.
In Korra, people get... after the spirit world comes back with the human worlds, people just become airbenders because of their spiritual virtue.
Yeah. I want to hear the Supernatural Encounters interpretation of that. Like, is there some council of celestials? Like, there's so many bits of this book where you just see a bunch of celestials talking about, like, how should we interfere on this planet to make it better again? There was probably one of those where they're just like, we need to give airbending back to some worthy people or something.
We can't have just one guy.
Yeah, and then somebody probably like Ifa the Sun, who's like the avatar of the dark, is probably like, well, we can't just give it to the good ones. We need to have at least one who's like a balancing act, and they give it to Zahir. So I'm writing my own Supernatural Encounters fan fiction now, but I mean, fucking fan fiction. We can come back to it again. But that, I believe, is all we have to say about Avatar. I hope that satisfied. That was a lot. This is going to be a long video. I wanted this to be a quickie, but it's going to be so long, man.
Yeah.
We'll see if we split it into two.
Yeah. I could see that.